place. So he's one of our own alumni, David Kulinski. And David, I just pulled some stuff off of LinkedIn, but it looks like you're doing some really cool stuff. Veteran of U.S. Air Force, MBA in Finance and Accounting from Cal Poly. Started his career as a staff accountant in financial marketing services. Worked his way up to CFO. Um, Made his transition in the nonprofit sector. He did some things with operations of Santa Maria Valley Youth and Family Center. You're now working for um, the U.S. government. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about your job and what's lean about it. So, David, thanks for being here.
Thank you, everybody. Uh, I'm David Kulinski. Yes, I am a Cal Poly alumni, and right now I work for the U.S. Department of Army. I am a U.S. Army civilian, and I am it's called Army G8, which Army likes to label things with acronyms. So when you hear G8, it just means we're the financial managers slash manpower and force management integrators. And that's right now I'm at Lower Alabama at the Aviation Center of Excellence and Enterprise at Fort Novacell. And this is where they train all of the aviators all over the world. We train from our allied people. We train them how to fly our Apaches, our Chinooks, and our Black Hawk helicopters.
And David, like, so this is a class we've got, when the class is totally full, 80 students, interested in learning about Lean Six Sigma. So do you like what's lean about your job? Is the job lean, or do you do lean, or what does that look like?
So I'll tell you, in working for the federal government, you could probably appreciate this, Professor. When the Department of Defense has a problem, they throw two things at it: money and bodies. That's how they solve their problem. And it doesn't always work. And so, probably about maybe a decade or so ago, the Army actually started looking heavily into Lean Six Sigma. And in fact, the Army has a black belt program, and they have a train the trainer program where you come up with a project. I actually went through the black belt program when I worked for the Department of Veteran Affairs. I had a really good project that I went through, and I got sponsored, very successful. I haven't I haven't quite. Maybe it's just in the point of my career. I haven't had the gumption to go through another Lean Six Sigma black belt program because the programs are totally different, right? VA
Oh, really?
operations and Army operations are completely separate. But to answer your question, the Army is one of the things. Believe it or not, in war and combat, you have to be lean. You can't just throw bodies and resources out into the combat zone. That's how people die. That's how people get hurt. That's how mistakes happen. And you have to absolutely be very efficient. Sure, the Pentagon's very heavy with their numbers and their staffing, but when it comes to theater operations, you have to be effective. You have to be very efficient in how you utilize what resources you have, because when the missiles start flying and stuff starts blowing up, that's gone. And then when we have to have the what we call the after action report, what the heck happened? How did we lose that? What was the root cause of why our
Mhm.
stuff got blown? What was our supply lines? We have a supply line issue, logistics. Was it a person? Was it somebody being stupid, not following the process?
Right. Very cool. So David, we were talking a little bit before we got started while the students were in their breakouts, talking about root causes. But can you tell us a little bit about your lean journey? So you mentioned some things, Veterans Affairs, and where you started, but tell us a little bit about how you got to where you are.
So one of the projects that I actually did that I learned it right there sitting in that course, Lean Operations Management for the MBA program. I was over there. I was the G8 again, the Force Integration Comptroller at NTC National Training Center at Fort Irwin, California. It's literally out in the middle of the desert. It's about the size of Rhode Island. It has a very big footprint there in California, and that's where the soldiers, we got Air Force, we got NASA out there. If you look at a satellite image, you'll see their big, massive satellite out there, and they go out there and train. So they go out there and they use their firepower, and part of that process. So we had this general officer come in, this new commanding general, and I'll just kind of give you a beginning state, and then I'll get work my way into the end state of what he wanted. So the beginning state is when the soldiers were coming in and to start training, it was a very controlled environment. But that's not real world. When a soldier goes into theater, they don't have the luxury of coming in and it's everything's all pre-positioned, everything's there. Oh, I just need to go pull off the shelf my MRE or whatever. He said, this commanding general, he looked at me, he said, Force Integrator, I want you to help develop a process, a complete process to mimic real world operations out there in theater. I want the soldiers to feel the worst when they come in. They're not going to be pulling stuff off the shelf. They're not going to be pulling. So I had to work with a team over a course of about 8 months to develop an entire process from scratch of when it's the moment a soldier comes in, they're not coming into it. They have to bring all that stuff in. So one of the things, like, and I don't know, can I ask the class, because I'm just to do a knowledge check here.
Yeah.
All right, so class, I have a question, as just because that's the scenario. Okay, so that's the beginning state.
David, let me help you out. So I'm going to tell the students, so if you could compose your answer in chat, but don't hit send until we count you down, and we'll have everybody send at the same time so we don't get a bunch of crosstalk bias here. So David, go ahead and ask your question.
Okay, so here your commanding general says, okay, I want you to develop a process. All right, and there's your beginning state. Your commander wants to emulate what the theater operations are at. There's no resources out there, so you basically have to build firepower up on your own. What's the first thing? So your soldiers come in and they secure an area, okay, and they're just, all you got is equipment and soldiers. What's the first thing that what's the next step in the process that you should focus on next?
All right, so let's give the students a second. So go ahead and compose your answer into chat. And then we'll do a little waterfall countdown. So David, if you look at your hit your chat button there so that you can kind of see what the students are going to come up with. And let's go ahead and count you down. So 3, 2, 1. Okay, hit send, everybody. What's the first thing you would need when you enter into that new theater operations here? So I got 2 messages. Muted the mic here. Let's see. So let's see. So Wes, are you there?
Yeah, we're here.
Okay, so I'm not getting anything from the chat. Nobody has a guess. We gotta at least have some guesses. First thing, I'm guessing bottle of water, but
see, Professor. Let's see if anybody else. What overall?
what
Yes,
else you got?
bottle of
What's the
water.
first thing?
That's right. What else? I mean, what overall? There's a term I'm looking for, and you could be close. Doesn't have to be 100%, but yes, bottled water is part of it.
All right, here we go.
Okay, somebody. Wow. Bartol. Yes, you know what that's called? Life support. Secure water, food, and shelter. That is absolutely the first step in when you're emulating a process in theater is securing life support. That is absolutely right. And why is that?
Why is that? Somebody in class, why you wanted that first?
Well, an army marches on their stomach, so if you don't have proper resources, you can't really achieve anything objective-wise.
That is a true statement. That is a very true statement. That's a good answer. But yeah. And then quick follow-up question. What's the second step? So now now you're bringing in resources. You're bringing in life support. So you're bringing in tents. You're bringing in generators, AC if you need it, whatever, right? So you're bringing all the life support equipment. Now, what do you need to do? This is all lean. This is all lean process management right here.
Go ahead and just type your answer directly into the chat if you've got one. Or Wes, if you can monitor people in the class, who's got an answer for us?
I'd say have a goal, but
No, they should already be trained.
Okay, we got some stuff coming up.
You should already have a plan going in, right? So you don't want to go in and take Bunker Hill without a plan. Should already be trained. You got your soldiers are well trained.
You got them
What's the
organized,
next step?
organized into platoons or whatever, command units.
Yeah, I guess so basically it's called force protection, right? So now that you've secured the resources in your process, right? You got water, shelter, now you got to protect them. You got to protect your assets. You got to protect your soldiers. You got to protect that water and tents. And then part of that would be established communications with your headquarters. So that was a good answer, Mr. Taylor.
All right, very good. So David, okay, so we've kind of talked a little bit about, like, one of your first sort of big challenges at your sort of upper level position now. What's your key lean challenge? Is it and usually I find these things sort of devolve into some sort of strategy questions that are maybe formulated from maybe a lean perspective or something, but
Yeah.
so
So one of the challenges right now in my current position is in Army aviation is shifting away from this kind of frontal assault, and they're looking more at sustainment, protecting the land, the ground forces that we already have in place out there in the field, because we're not out land grabbing, right? The US isn't trying to invade and occupy territory.
right.
And so as a result, that, like with aviation, the Blackhawks, the Chinooks, there's not a big demand right now in the combat, in the theater, for short air range support from your Apaches, your Blackhawks. And so they're shifting to unmanned aerial systems, what we call UASs.
Right.
And part of that shift is the challenge from a resourcing perspective is we still want to maintain the Apaches, the Blackhawks, that massive national investment that the taxpayers have put into the defense of this country. But at the same time, we got to develop new training doctrine for these UASs and build up capability to make sure that these UASs can effectively support the Army, because there's only so much resources, right? And so trying to build that process, build the personnel, build the training as we shift from manned aerial aviation platforms to unmanned aviation system platforms. Now, of course, there's a lot of risk associated, because a lot of UASs don't quite have the payload. They can't carry near the payload that like an Apache can or a Blackhawk can. So that's the real challenge that I'm facing. Is Congress has, I don't want to say defund, but they're reducing over the next 5 years. They've been slowly reducing the aviation funding, while at the same time they're increasing funding of the unmanned aerial systems.
Interesting.
Yep.
So David, I'm gonna encourage our students to ask you questions. So if you've got a question for David, go ahead and type it in the chat, and we'll ask you to come online and join us in our little spotlighted discussion here and answer those sorts of questions. So David, in the process, or that challenge that you described, I think we all have heard of sort of government waste or whatnot. So when you've got to develop this sort of new process or this new mode of support for our ground forces, do you guys do like waste analysis? Do you do like the seven mudas and try to figure out, like, those at that level of detail, or is it a sort of a higher level thing for you?
No, actually we do. It's hit and miss. You got to have lean thinkers involved, right? And not everybody, I'll be frank, not everybody in the Army are lean thinkers, but there are, like I said, 50% of us or so, and maybe 40% are lean thinkers, as we're trying to think through this shift. Because right now commanders, they're like, hey, I got an aviation brigade to run, and they don't have any UASs in their brigade, but they want the resource, they want my time, they want the money and the manpower to support their mission. But the reality is, when the mission, I got to tell them that's not in Congress's best interest right now. They're shifting away from that. And so to answer your question, it's trying to get people to look at the what do you really need to train a soldier? And I don't want to use the term bare minimum, because I don't want to give the impression that we're just barely training our aviators. That's actually not true. It's very much flush with resources, but those
Right.
resources are getting smaller. Okay.
Right.
And one of the things that, for example, to answer your question, is they had, so we did this analysis, and this was actually before my time, but I had the opportunity to read the report. So before AI and all this other high-end technology came online, we were training our soldiers in the helicopters. We'd walk out, walk around, they'd read a manual, and just like this, it was all sit down, brick and mortar. And then the pilot trainer, the aviator trainer, would take them out into the helicopter and fly them around and teach them how to fly a helicopter. Well, the problem is when somebody screws up or crashes a helicopter, that's really expensive. So the Army invested hundreds of millions of dollars into simulators.
Hmm.
And price per soldier now, it costs on average about 18-19 million dollars to train an aviator versus the 150 million dollars. And it was looking at all the waste in that whole process. So yes, it costs a lot of upfront money and maintenance costs for those simulators. I'd encourage you, if you ever want to join the Army, and these simulators are pretty high tech. It's really neat. And so these soldiers now can go into these simulators, learn how to fly in a very safe and controlled environment. And they could set up all the environment in those simulators however they want, the instructors, and then they go out onto the helicopter. And what that did, because one of the things what's really expensive is fuel. I mean, fuel has been doing nothing but going up. You think it's
Yeah.
hard on the gas pump there and for your car, imagine for a helicopter. And so that huge reduction in fuel consumption for the Army. So just switching over to those simulators. I mean, that was a big deal. And we're still trying to nail down a good training program that's still effective, while at the same time we're maintaining readiness, if you will, for the aviators and the Black Hawk and the Chinook pilots, but at the same time we're shifting over our resources to the UASs and trying to find, okay, what in that training module do you absolutely critically need? What's a nice to have? That sort of thing. And that's where these scenario writers look into that process to make sure that we're getting every bang for our buck, because Congress is not increasing the budget of the defense budget.
And that, in one of the ways that sort of ties into our class, we talk a lot about, in order to do lean, you have to have a good understanding of what the value is you're trying to get out, right?
That's
So that
right.
if readiness is your objective, what's the most efficient process for delivering that readiness, and
Absolutely.
and being clear on that is critically important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's very, to piggyback on, readiness is very, it's loosely thrown around in the Army, but at the same time, it's very prescribed. And trying to, when I'm talking with my peers or subordinates or superiors, everybody's got to be on the same sheet of music when it comes to readiness. Back to your point, it's
Right.
like if they think readiness means this, and I think readiness means this, well, that's going to create conflict, and it's
Right.
going to create problems in the process.
Yeah, and getting all those stakeholders to buy in and get that understanding is kind of a key part to the things that we do. And that's a little bit of the soft side on the whole sort of black belt, green belt project management aspect, is getting all that buy-in from those stakeholders, up front, right? And a
That's
good
right.
understanding of what the value is and what it is you're trying to deliver, right?
That's right. That's right.
So David, I don't know as we're gonna get a last question from a student to finish us out here. Are they, anybody want to jump in? All right, I'm gonna go ahead and switch and get you on your way then, David. David, the
Yes,
way
sir.
we end all these interviews is we ask you, the last question is, you got the students, we got 26 online and probably another 25 in class. Oh, and you got the exact number, I know, since we did the attendance analysis and plotting. But David, what piece of advice would you have for these next generation of lean leaders that we're trying to put out into the world?
Well, I'll speak from personal experience. So one of the things that I've been told of why I'm so successful in my career is I'm more financial manager than I am an operator. But having a thorough understanding of Lean Six Sigma and being a black belt in the VA has really set me up. But this is the thing. I always tell people I budget with my feet. And what that means is I want to actually see, I want to see what the soldiers are seeing. I want to see the tank. I want to see what they're trying to buy, what they're trying to procure. I want to walk me through the process from cradle to grave. Just because I have that background knowledge of Lean Six Sigma, don't be afraid to get out of your chair. Don't be afraid to get out of your desk. That's part of operations management, is getting out of your desk and getting out there. You know, when you got people at the Pentagon, like I got people at the Pentagon, they don't know what we do in the trenches. So they think they know, but they actually don't. And so that's where my best advice, when you're in similar positions, you are that conduit, right?
Right.
Understand that process, live it, breathe it, smell it, whatever you got to do, walk it from cradle to grave, so you can map it out, and you could be part of the solution rather than part of the problem.
Boy, David, great advice. Thank you for that. And one of the other things we do to wrap things up, if all the students can come on here, let's give David a wave. Thank you. David, these are some of the people that you've affected with your advice, and
Sir,
we'll hopefully see you again in a future
absolutely.
interview.
Yep.
All right.
Invite me anytime, Professor. It's good seeing
All
you
right.
again.
All right.
All
Good
right.
seeing you too. Take care. Bye-bye.
All right.